Ladies and gentlemen, to officially launch the book, John W. Sexton.
Can you hear me without the microphone?
Yeah, we can. Yes.
Would you like me to use the microphone? No,
No, you're fine.
I'm not
No, you're fine.
You had your chance.
We can hear you, man.
You had your chance. A book of poetry by Kieran Beville called Fool's Gold. Who is Kieran Beville? What is poetry? What is Fool's Gold? Well, I'm going to tell you. If you head out the door here, follow the river, cross over the bridge, and make your way to King John's Castle Plaza, you will find a poet standing out in the cold. He's been standing out in the cold for some time, and it's not a bother to him. He's a poet that's been turned into a statue. He's out there since 2005, turned into a statue. Michael Hogan, the Bard of Thomond. You might say, being turned into a statue is an honour. It is. But if you were turned into a statue, you might say, it's a bit of a fucking curse. Because there they are, you're at Norweathers, there's drunks whispering in your ear, there's people and dogs maybe urinating against you, there's birds defecating on your head. It is both a blessing, an honour and a curse. But it's not a bother to the Bard of Thomond. It's not a bother to the Bard of Thomond because he's immortal. Of course, that statue may not always be there. It may not always be there because this is one of the curses of statues. One night, it's very possible it's happened. One night, it may be pulled free of its pedestal, thrown in the back of a truck or a skip, and taken off for short money to be melted into scrap. If the Bard of Thomond suffers that indignity, it won't be a bother to him. If he's melted for scrap, it won't be a bother to him because he's immortal. Now the thing is, this immortal poet, the Bard of Thomond, very few people nowadays of a younger generation even know who he is. Very few even know any of his ballads anymore or can recite them from memory. Even of the older generations, our memories are going and there's very little we can retain in our heads. In other words, he's forgotten and he's being increasingly forgotten. But it's not a bother to him because he's immortal. And you might think, how can he be immortal if he's forgotten? How can he be forgotten if he's immortal? Well, the thing about poetry, its immortality isn't in it being remembered. It's in it being done. The poet becomes immortal through poetry as soon as a poet sits down to compose poetry. Because poetry has nothing to do with poetry. It's nothing to do with itself. It's nothing to do with the poet who's merely the vessel of poetry. Poetry is the place that gives us poetry. Wherever you are and wherever you're from, when you're in a place, you're owned by that place. Tonight we're owned by this place, this city, Limerick. Every poet is owned by the place that he's in. And in our culture, this place is the goddess of the earth, the goddess of complete being. And in our poetry history, she was the muse who spoke to musicians, who spoke to artists, who spoke to all poets. And she is immortal. And we get lost in her when we write our poetry. And we get forgotten because of her. You can see the goddess here in this city. She's not too far away. She moves through the city in her muddy courses. We call her the Shannon. She is the manifestation of the goddess, the muse, in this city. And she sends her tributaries of streets through the city to capture us. And we become immortalized when we surrender ourselves to her. Do you think that's a load of shite? Do you think I'm talking nonsense? Well, I'm not. Let me tell you. Let me prove it to you. Let me show you how immortal poets are. If you go down towards the river to King John's Castle Plata, you'll find a poet standing out in the cold, turned into metal. He's immortal. Who put him there? Who the fuck put that poet there? The city mesmerised a group of little Pauline to spend their lives earning the money to build that statue, to immortalise her poet. And there he is, standing out in the cold, standing on the pavement of this city, next to the river of this city, immortal. Poetry is fool's gold. It doesn't belong to any of us. It doesn't even belong to the poet. But the poet belongs to poetry. That's the blessing and the curse of poetry. And there are a lot of poets and artists and musicians in this room. And we love the curse and the blessing of our art equally. There's a lot of talk, and there should be, about the Make Poets and that group of important poets out at Crewe. And that community of poets stretched all the way to Temple Glanton, all over the county in this area. But it's not the only community of poets. We're here in the city, and we have an important community, an important tradition in this city. Now you probably think by my Sassenach accent, I'm not of this place. You'd be wrong. You would be wrong. I'm of this county, and wherever a poet's from, when they stand in a place, that place owns them then. One of the most important poets of that tradition, of the bardic tradition of the ordinary people, was Michael Hogan, the Bard of Thomond. Kieran Beville, in this book, continues that tradition. He is one of those poets of the people, writing of this city, losing himself in this city. It was this city that gave him his parents, that gave him his surroundings, that gave him everything. You'll find in this book. There's only one other thing you have to do to support this book, this city, and discover its riches. Buy a copy. It's €12. Look at that wonderful cover by John Shinnors and internal artwork by Kate Hennessy. This is Limerick pouring out of itself. Let it pour into you. And with those final words, I would like to formally launch this mighty collection of poetry by Kieran Beville, Fool's Gold. Buy a copy.